the easiest, fastest, and most enjoyable way to learn a new language. Learning a new language is pretty well known as being long, exhausting, and extremely discouraging. Or at least that's what it's been like for me the past 2 years as I have been learning German. But is there another way rather than going through the traditional academic way of learning a new language? I hear pretty often, and even within my own German family here, that they have learned English all through school. They know the grammar, they know everything correctly, and then they also come to an English-speaking country and they can't talk to anybody. They don't understand the people and what they're saying and the slang that they're using. So that also makes me feel like the formal academic system of learning a new language is maybe a little bit flawed. So after going through this whole experience myself, this is what I wish I would have started with. This is what I think of as the easiest, fastest, and most enjoyable way to learn a new language. And you can do it in just 5 steps. So step number 1, and you have to establish this. Why are you actually wanting to learn this language? If you just think, okay, it sounds a little cool, you know, but you're not actually wanting to go visit that country, or you don't really have any ties to that language, then you might lack the motivation later on to continue learning it. In general, you'll have a way higher motivation for learning a language if you actually have a reason for it. For me, I can say that even when I was in Germany, I didn't want to learn German because it was annoying, it was painstaking, and I didn't really have a plan with my life. This was before I decided which apprenticeship I wanted to get into. And so, you know, at this time, I had no plans. I was just living. I didn't want to study German. I had no motivation to. And it was only after I actually chose an apprenticeship that I wanted to do that gave me a motivation to continue with my German and to learn it further and to get better at it, because I had something to look forward to and it became more exciting. But your reasons for learning a language could be totally different. Maybe you want to go travel to a country and you want to be able to communicate to the locals. Or maybe you just want to go to a country because you think the people there are very attractive. Any reason that you have to learn a language is a valid reason. Step number 2 is to learn the most common words. And it's very important to know that not all words are created equal. Think about English, for example. The words that you use most commonly in English only make up a very small portion of the entire English vocabulary. Think about it. If you're a native English speaker, like I'm a native English speaker, I don't even know all of the vocabulary in English. So why would you ever need to know a word in your new language that you wouldn't even think of using in the language that you speak? And when you start building up your vocabulary library in a new language, you can do a lot more than you would think. If you know the vocabulary, you can read books without knowing any grammar because you're not the one writing it. You can just read it and learn more vocabulary as you do that. And you can also communicate your feelings to people. If I'm seated at the table with my German family and I say Salz bitte, they're gonna know what I'm talking about, you know? I don't need to say a whole formal sentence to communicate myself. And for basic conversations, you really only need probably 1,000 or 2,000 words from the new language that you're learning. And this is actually a principle. This is called Pareto Principle. And the Pareto Principle states that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of the causes. And this is also known as the vital few, or the 80-20 rule. And this pretty much means that a very small percentage of all of the words in a language make up for like 80, 90, 95% of most conversations. So with a few thousand words, you can carry out so many conversations, maybe not very detailed themes about like rocket science or physics or something, but you can have a conversation with people and you can express yourself so much more than if you're just learning random words that you're not actually going to be using. Okay, so how do I make up this list of 1,000 words that are best suited for me? So I would definitely recommend making your own list of your top 1,000 words, because you can find lists of top 1,000 words in any language, but it's not really accurate. There were times where I was doing that, I was looking through it, and one of my family members says, like, this is a German word that you would never use, and people hardly ever use it. Well, think about it. What words do you use most often in your language? Make a list of really simple words that you have to use in basic conversation, like the, and, stuff like that. Maybe some numbers and time. And then also make sure you look up the most common nouns in this language, and I would recommend just keeping them in the infinitive form for now. Just know the basic nouns, because when you start, that's going to be good enough. And a very important thing is that you need to learn how to pronunciate what you're learning. So I would recommend that you're actually listening to the words as you're learning them. And even in Google Translate, you can put the word in and it has the little play button and it will speak to you how it is properly pronounced. And you can practice that, because to actually be able to talk, you have to say it correctly. Otherwise, people may not understand you completely. So now that you have built up your arsenal of vocabulary, it's time to move on to step number 3. Step 3 is a little tiny bit of grammar. So pretty much what I recommend for step 3 is that you learn the basic sentence structure, and just stick with that. You're going to be using that for 95% of your sentences. Even when you're fluent, you're probably still going to be using that sentence structure for 90% of the time at least. And then the other thing I recommend doing at this time is also learning a bit of personal pronouns. So this is how you would say nouns differently for I, you, he, she, they, but also realize which personal pronouns are actually the most used. So definitely learn I, you, he, she, and then whatever is the formal tense. And you know what? When you get to this point, you can talk, you can say sentences, you can actually communicate to people properly. And that leads us straight into number 4, which is to literally talk to anybody who will listen to you and absorb as much of your new language as possible. And some ideas that you could use for doing this is by listening to podcasts, listening to music, watching movies. And you can also read books in whatever language that you're learning, but I would recommend starting with an easier book rather than just opening up a novel. And one thing that I actually would recommend is these types of books. And so they're not children's books, which is very nice, because if you read children's books when you're an adult, then it's very discouraging. But this book is Sophie Scholl, and it's an A2 level, so they actually adapt the text to specific levels. So I will leave a link to this below, as well as some other resources that I have found very helpful in the last few years learning German. And another good thing about these books is that they do have some questions in them, so you can see a lot of it you can do without really studying the grammar so much. A lot of it is just reading comprehension, so anybody could do that. And finally, please, I just want to give you some courage to go and talk to people in your second language. And I know you're gonna make mistakes. You probably know that you're gonna make mistakes because you're not a perfect fluent speaker. And that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. People will understand you no matter what. And really just try and find ways to make it fun, you know? Don't read something if you're not interested in it. Read things that you actually like. Listen to music that you actually enjoy. And now comes step number 5, the final step before becoming fluent in a language. And yes, unfortunately, you still have to do this. Unfortunately, you still have to learn the grammar of a language. But there's actually quite a few benefits to doing this a little bit later. If you already have a lot of vocabulary that you know, if you're already talking to people and you know like the basic sentence structure, you will have a much easier time learning the grammar. You're not just going to be memorizing random things that you don't understand and you have no idea why it's relevant and why you need it. And as well, when you're learning the grammar, you can actually communicate to your teacher. You can have a conversation with them, and it's just so much better for understanding things. Because really, the last thing that you want to do is go through this traditional academic system of learning a language and just memorize things to get through a test, because that was me. And there's things that I have been taught 100 times and I still don't fully understand it, and it's gonna take some time to do that. So this method isn't painless, but it makes it so much more enjoyable, and I do believe that it makes it easier. So of course, this video is just my personal opinion, and these are things that, as somebody who has learned a second language, this would have been very helpful for me in the beginning. But I do understand that this may not work for everybody. Some people want to go through the academic way, being in classes and learning grammar right away, and that's fine. And another thing is, it really depends on your situation. For me, if I would have started this method when I first moved to Germany, it probably wouldn't have worked. Because for me, when I moved to Germany, within the first 90 days of living there, I had to write the A1 exam. Here's a little infograph of the different language levels, and I had to do the very minimal basic test to be able to get my residency in Germany. So yeah, I understand that at that point, it probably wouldn't have worked so well just to learn in this method. But if you're still living at home and you're wanting to go and travel to another country, and if you have some time, then I would definitely recommend this way. Especially if you don't have any tests to write or hoops to jump through or anything. If it's for you and you just want to be able to speak the language, then yeah, you can do this. If you're just wanting to travel to another country, heck, you don't even need to learn the grammar. It's probably not going to be that important. So as for me, I have really taken a break from my German this whole last year. I haven't been in formal classes for a year now, pretty much. And so I've really looked back on how I'm learning German and how I can learn it better and more efficiently and more enjoyably. So I would say, honestly, where I am at right now is probably on step 4, because you know, I'm reading right now, I'm talking. Ich kann mit anderen Leuten reden und es freut mich, dass ich kann ihnen verstehen, which is so much farther along than I was when I was in my formal classes. So I know that when COVID settles down a bit, maybe this next winter, I know that I'll be going back into my B2 German classes, and that's okay, because I know at that point I will have such a better understanding of things, and I think it's just going to be a lot easier than it was when I came out of my B2 classes a year ago. So yeah, I wish you guys all the best in whichever language that you guys are learning. I hope that you'll give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!